You're good.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Doug, and this is just a little testament of my life in this business. I'm, as you can see, 90 years old today, and I just want to lay it out there as to what kind of a life I've had in this business, and share it with you as if it wanted to be shared by somebody. Take care. I'll see you in a second. Hi friends, I made it today to my goal, my 90th birthday. I'd like to give you just a little rundown as to what my life in this business has been like. And it has been my whole life outside of my family and my beautiful wife Sally. My first act that I produced was an act called The Apollos. It was a 5-piece garage band, and it was done in Sacramento. First of all, there was a kid in it, 16 years old, named Lee Greenwood, and then I had my high school friend, Joe Jeffrey, and our singer in the Apollos had an accident and was no longer able to be on stage. So I had to tell Lee, "Okay, kid, you're going to have to sing." And Lee said, "Oh no." He said, my musical teacher said that I'll be good playing instruments," which Lee had 6 that he could play, by the way. And he said that I'll be a good instrumentalist but never be able to sing. Well, I said, "You've got to." And I gave him Bobby Darin's Somewhere Beyond the Sea. And that's how he started his vocal career. Joe Jeffrey was, as I said, my friend in school. He later had a big hit called My Pledge of Love. And Lee had his success. So between the two of them in my first garage group, garage band as they call it, I had a total of over 20,000 records sold. My second act was Venus and the Voyagers, and it was a little girl from Mexico City was Venus. By the way, I named all these acts except the Apollos. She was from Mexico City. She was a little movie star down there, and she came up to New Orleans, and she fell in love with a fellow named Larry Ford, and he was the comic, put her in the act. Venus was 36 inches tall, and as you know, that was 3 feet tall. Just the tiniest little girl you've ever seen, and so beautiful, and so everything was so normal with her, and so we had her in the show, and did a little thing with her called Jalisco, Jalisco, and she sang it in Spanish. And then we had our 2 dancers whip off her Mexican dress, and there she was in what we called her Coca-Cola dress, and put a wig on her. And while this was all happening, she started out with, "They call me hard-hearted Hannah, the vamp of Savannah." Many times she got a standing ovation for that. Her husband, Larry Ford, insisted he was the half-brother of Tennessee Ernie. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. Anyway, she made the original cover of the National Enquirer. She also starred in Alfred Hitchcock weekly series TV show, and she made her mark all over the country in every club we played. And speaking of clubs, I had 3 nightclubs before I was 30. One was in Idaho, one was in West Covina, California, the other one was in Portland, Oregon. That's the kind of start I had in our theatrical business. Okay. Another show I gave the name to was the Rainbow Express. And that was very interesting. It started out as a three-piece group. It ended up with a seven-piece group with the leader, Lou Merrick, his beautiful wife, Carla. By the way, the first name of the Rainbow Express was the Sugar and Spice. As they moved on, and we gave them the name the Rainbow Express, and they began to advance and grow. After that, his wife had her star on the Hall of Fame, and they played extensive clubs here in Las Vegas. They just went from club to club to club, and then after starting out with that early three-piece group, working all over Las Vegas, during that time, the leader of the group, Lou Merrick, and his sons started an event group, which became one of the largest in the city, called the Las Vegas Entertainment Productions, and it now has become one of the largest event companies in Las Vegas, Nevada, including Legion Stadium, etc., etc., etc. It is extremely successful, and it all pertains to the act that was the Rainbow Express. They have been totally successful and a wonderful example of what our business does for people in entertainment. It was just outstanding. And we started with a residence at the Mint, then to the Flamingo, to the Desert Inn opposite Tom Jones, became the head resident of all the Playboy clubs in the world. It was just outstanding and is remembered. Playing everywhere possible, including Hawaii, including the Nassau Beach Hotel, Canada, Hawaii, just all over this country. Then we took residences throughout entertainment. It was just an incredible success, possibly remembered to this day. At the residence of the Playboy clubs, it was just outstanding. Hef Barbie Benton and his crew came to see us in the Playboy Club up in Lake Geneva. And I was asked in Lake Geneva if I would go up to Milwaukee and make a TV appearance about the show and about the Playboy clubs. So I did that thing, and the announcer and head of the program was Rosemary Clooney, the famous singer's brother. And as we went along, there was a little 5-year-old kid bouncing around during the recordings, and his father kept saying, "George, George, will you stop that? Where's the nanny? Let's get him out of here. I've got a show to do." And of course, as I remember, that was George Clooney. And another time, when we were playing the Nassau Beach Hotel, between shows, I was downstairs in the karaoke room, which wasn't open yet, sitting there by myself at the bar. And a pretty large guy came down, and he said, I said hi to him. I said, "I see you every Friday night with quite a group of people around you watching the show." And he said, "Yes, I fly them in from London." And I thought, "What?" And he said, "My name is Chaz Chandler. I'm one of the Animals, and I really, really like your show. And I was going to ask you, do you know a good bass player that I might use? I have a young man in Greenwich Village in New York, and I want to form a trio with him, but I need an outstanding bass player." And I said, "Gee, I'm sorry, but I don't know that much of a musical one. Most of mine have been theatrical." And he said, "Well, that's okay. What's the name of the young man? He must be very talented to attract your interest." And he said, "Well, he's just very young. His name is Jimi Hendrix." Later on, in another part of the country, we were playing again in Texas, and in our show, there was a young star. Her name was Edie Adams. She was sitting down front watching us. She'd been following us for quite a while. And we said, Edie, why don't you do a song with us? And she said, no, no, no. And the audience went kind of crazy. And up on stage, we encouraged her. But we didn't realize Edie was pretty drunk. And when she sang, she was totally off key. And everyone in the audience thought she was doing a joke, a comedy. And Edie, who became a close friend, one time in Reno, Nevada, I looked up at the Mapes Hotel on the second floor and I saw Marilyn Monroe. And later, as I explained this to Edie, she said, yes, we were in New York at the famous Theatrical Academy. And Marilyn and I were living in an apartment for 6 months together. And Edie said it was a very interesting experience, but just wonderful. She loved Marilyn. And then years later, well, not too many years later, I looked up walking to the Mapes Hotel in Reno, Nevada, and on the second floor, looking out, was Marilyn. And Marilyn went ahead to make the movie with Clark Gable, and then we all know what happened to Marilyn shortly after that. I was on the road for 18 years with my act, The Action Faction, intermitting with the Rainbow Express and back to the Action Faction. And it was an incredible experience. However, driving through small towns late at night with their lights on, I began to get homesick, and following trucks in the fog to make sure that I didn't run into something because they could see pretty well was becoming tiresome. All the road was coming tiresome, and then I was cheered up on Rush Street when we were playing Rainbow Express in Chicago. And we had our truck, which had 5 motorcycles, all our costumes, etc., in it. And so we parked it backwards, and right next to us was a club called The Rush. There was a little girl who sang incredibly, was 18 years old, and that was Chaka Khan. It was an interesting experience. I would lay in the sissy bar in the back of my motorcycle after I took it out of the truck and watched the huge crowds on Rush Street. One time on Rush Street, there was a larger crowd than ever surrounding someone, and as that someone got across from me, he said, "Give me that bike." And everyone laughed and so on, but he did want it. He did want to take a ride on it, so I put him on the back, leaning against the sissy seat. He was kind of a large guy, and we went for a little ride there in Chicago in the streets. When we came back, the huge crowd was still there, and I simply said, well, thanks, Muhammad. It was just wonderful riding with you, and that was Muhammad Ali. But I had gotten so tired of the business that I wanted a couple of years off. That was 43 years ago, and that's when I met my dear wife in Las Vegas. Her father was a musical director of a group called the Kim Sisters, and it was also interesting. She was an agent, and by this time I was a personal manager and an agent. I mean, not an agent, but a musical producer. And I got a call about 7:30 in the morning, and I answered it. And she said, "Hello, this is Sally. I wanted to call you about booking an act." And I said, "What are you doing calling me so early when I'm not in the office?" And she said, "Well, the leader of the group called the Bathtub Gin Gang from Knott's Berry Farm, and I would like to bring him to Las Vegas." As it turned out, we did exactly that and started an ice cream store here in town. And as this ice cream store failed, I'd always wanted to, from the time I was a kid, to drive cab. So I did that, and for a couple of years, many very funny things happened. And one of the first ones, when I pulled out of the Desert Inn with a crew of 5 people in the cab, one sitting next to me said, "Is this a sleazeball town or what?" And I said, no, except for the sleazeball visitor. And of course, it got very quiet in the cab after that. We let him off at Caesar's Palace. And as we started to take the other 4 people, they broke it up in the cab, whooping, laughing so hard. And I said, what in the world? And they said, do you know who that was? And I said, no idea. And they said, Steve Jobs. Another time, when I went to the back of the Flamingo, the lady of the night in the back seat said, this is it. I had to come to the back because they would stop me if I came into the front. And I said, well, there's a new apartment building here, 2 stories, and the elevator is right back. The huge glass windows, you can see it right back to the elevator, which isn't far back, through a small hall. And the lady of the night came around to pay me with a stack of bills in her hand. It was extremely windy. So the wind blew the money in her hand all over. I put the cab in park, put the emergency brake on, went out and got the money all over to help her with it. Then I heard a loud crash. The cab had backed all the way over through the huge bin window right back to the elevator. As all the guards came from the Flamingo and were all checking to see if I had the car in park, etc., the door to the elevator opened, and there was a couple stood. The woman looked terrified with the back of that car right up to the window. Everybody looked, all the guards, and I simply said, are you the folks that called the cab? After that, I considered driving taxi for quite a period of time. Then I decided I would like to get back in the business some way, but all of my mentors and all of my connections by this time had almost gotten out of the business, except for just a few. So I decided to see after an ad in the paper if I could move into the backstage. And I was hired. There I was up in the backstage working the spotlight as the worst spotlight operator in the city of Las Vegas. I worked for Legends in Concert, Jon Stewart's great accomplishment. And the head of the backstage was Ron Peters. I got to work on stage with the lighting with the most wonderful tribute artists in the world. Just unbelievable. And through them I met so many wonderful friends, I can't name them all. After I stopped my spotlight adventure, I went back into the business and started taking some of the great tribute artists and putting them in shows. One of the really good ones was Memories of Ed Sullivan. Is on YouTube now. There were so many shows that I did over a period of time with his incredible artists they were so amazing, and I made such beautiful friends. Then I became the musical director of the Sanders Family Winery in Pahrump for 3 years, and now it's all relaxation at 90 years old. I made the best friend of the tribute artists. They were so welcoming. I loved them so much. I can't name them all because it would go on for hours. I had very special ones. I don't know how to express it. But that's been the last 90 years of my beautiful life. Of course, I've left out a few minutes. And thanks for listening. Think I did okay?
You did great.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you did great.